You know, Simon, with comedy, there'd be no laughter without the writers, would there?
No, very little.
And unless the writers put the words into the comic's mouth, there'd be nothing at all. And here's one of Australia's most celebrated comedy writers, McColl Jones. Hi, Mike.
Hello, Philip. How are you? Happy Easter to you, and to you, Simon, and to Ken behind the scenes.
And to you too, Mike.
Thank you.
Good to hear your voice again.
Thank you, Philip. It was lovely tuning into the telethon as I did on Good Friday.
Yes.
To see you there in the latest comedy duo, you and Neil Mitchell. I thought that was a really interesting pairing.
Well, you know, I try to keep very low key, and when it comes to telethons, I do my best to stay in the background as far as possible.
Philip, I was doing some lip reading, and when you dropped Brady Bunch on Neil, he blanched, which is not easy to do when you've got a beard.
You know, I enjoyed working with Neil so much, and he was so much fun. I rang him this afternoon to tell him, Neil, it was a real buzz.
Oh, that's very nice. I'm sure that's made his Easter weekend.
You know, deep down, he's a very warm and humorous person.
Yes, he is. I've known Neil for quite a while. In fact, I could tell you a really fun story about Neil, but we're here to do something else. And by the way, Philip, I looked at about 20 other people on the telly who were roughly your age in there at Channel 7.
Yes.
And you were the only one who didn't have grey hair. Yours is orange again.
It must be the way
you're still shampooing in Fanta.
No, you'll have to retune your TV set.
Oh, really? And you also managed to get. I used to love it, Philip. You'd ring me, Philip would ring me during the day, and he'd say, "Mike, do you realise what today is?" And I'd say, "No, Philip. It's like March the 22nd or something."
Yeah.
And Philip would say, "It's the 500th sketch I've ever done with Graham."
That's right.
Or it's the 200th time I've been hit by a pie, which wasn't enough, by the way.
Yeah, or I've just done 3,000 quiz shows for Reg Grundy this week.
Yes, that was the other one. You know, and I love the quote that you and Bruce claimed that you've talked so many people out of committing suicide.
Yes, we have.
What you neglected to say, Philip, was the number of people you'd talked into.
Yeah, that might well be true. We're talking comedy, as
yes,
you know.
We are.
Do you go to the comedy festival yourself?
No, I haven't been, Philip, this year. I have been in the past, and I like to keep alongside of all of that thing. But I thought we'd start right back when comedy started. And I think the earliest comedy, probably the first joke ever written, involves a man, a woman, an apple, and a snake.
Yeah.
I think God probably looks back on that as being the best joke of all time.
Yeah.
Now we move along some centuries to the court jester, and you could easily have been a court jester, Philip.
Yes, in another life.
This was pretty serious comedy, because if the jester didn't get a laugh from the court, who would always take their cue from the king, who, by the way, might have had a bad day, one of his wives nagged him, or he'd had a bad afternoon on the punt at the Colosseum. But the bottom line for the court jester was if he didn't get a laugh, he might be killed. Yeah. And that could be where the expression, "that joke died," came from.
Maybe.
It'd be a tough line of work, wouldn't it, the court jester?
Oh, yes, yes. It would be like making also the Bernie Fraser laugh, for example.
I agree. I think you once told me there are only 7 jokes in the whole world, and every other one is derived from those 7.
There are 7 basic comedy constructions.
Yes,
there are.
That's interesting, isn't it?
Yeah.
And you fall into the number 8 one, Philip.
Well, it's the same with the piano. There are only 88 keys or something. You can, write so many different melodies.
Well, I guess it's the same as putting 100 typewriters and monkeys into a room and expecting to see an act from Hamlet being written.
Yeah, true.
Now, a lot of comedy travels very well. Sight comedy in particular, the old Chaplin movies have stood up pretty well over time. Comedy, topical humour, of course, doesn't travel. By virtue of the fact that it's topical and it's only funny on that day, or perhaps a couple of days later. But I thought I'd look at the various countries, Philip. English comedy, by and large, is understated and precise, crisply written and beautifully cast.
Yes. And too much toilet humour.
Well, there's a lot of toilet humour around nowadays, isn't there?
Yeah, but especially from Britain. Very childish, I think.
The French comedy is based on a lot of sight again. They love visual comedy. Marcel Marceau and Jerry Lewis, of course, is king in France.
Yeah.
American comedy is either very good or very bad. Americans don't laugh at much that happens outside their country.
And much of it is canned laughter anyway.
Yes, they do, and that is a bit frustrating. Do you remember, Philip, years ago, TCN used canned laughter, and it was the same track always, and it was Bobby Lim's Laugh. Do you remember it? It came out of the Lim,
Yes.
the Mobile Lim show.
That's right. They used it for years.
Yes,
Now,
that's why their news never rated that well.
No. Japanese humour is very cruel. You only have to look at their game shows where they put a scorpion into some guy's jocks, and they think that's hilarious.
Yeah. You know, and
That happened to you, Philip, or was it a funnel web?
no, there was a funnel web spider. We know who put it in there up in the
Who put it in?
during a celebrity guessing game show, but that's another story.
I can't wait for that person to die. So
Why don't you
finally
name that
reveal it.
person, Philip?
I know who the person is.
Do you?
Now living in America.
Really?
Yeah, but that's as far as I'll go. But
Not
anyway.
PJ Lane.
By the way, talking of Japanese humour, Andy Williams tells me that he walked out on stage there at the pavilion in Tokyo, sang Moon River, and there was deathly silence after the song. But apparently the Japanese show their way of appreciation not by clapping, but by bowing at the end of the song.
Yes, they do.
Scary
Yes, they do.
stuff.
It is. Irish comedy is lovely. It's gentle, timeless, and lovely stories.
Yeah.
Australian humour is quite unique because it's irreverent, clever, cheeky. The sign outside the Hawthorn Church of Christ, what would you do if Christ came to Hawthorn? Move Peter Hudson out to Centre Half Forward. Is a very good example of Australian humour.
That is, isn't it? Yes.
And I thought I might mention, since we're talking about comedy, some of my favourite comedy people.
Please.
Graham Kennedy.
Yeah, by the way, you don't have to include me now. I know how you feel about me, but leave me off the list for now.
I don't believe you said that, Philip.
No.
Graham Kennedy, I could watch him. In fact, I did watch him live from the floor of Studio 1 or Studio 9 for nearly 2,000 shows.
I know.
Jack Benny had the ability to get a laugh with silence.
Yeah.
Jack, who was notoriously mean, was once stopped by a gunman in the city street who looked at him and pointed the gun at him and said, "Your money or the life. Your money or your life." And Jack looked at him and didn't answer. The gunman said, what's your answer? And Jack turned to him slowly and said, "I'm thinking about it."
Oh, I love it.
Shelley Berman could take an ordinary situation using a phone and turn it into a beautiful comedy classic, such as The Department Store. Dave Allen, one of the best storytellers around. Peter Cook and Dudley Moore. I didn't write for them, but I survived a couple of memorable lunches.
I think they were fabulous.
Their audition, the one-legged man as for the part of Tarzan, was a true comedy classic.
Yes, wonderful.
The two Ronnies, the jokes like, "Tonight we talk with a car designer who crossed Toyota with Quasimodo and came up with the hatchback of Notre Dame."
Oh, clever.
And those lovely jokes.
Yes.
Johnny Carson, I never saw his stand-up. Did you, Philip?
Well, we saw his opening monologue.
No, his stand-up in Vegas.
Oh, no, sadly I didn't, Mike. I didn't ever see his floor show, no.
I never saw it, but Don taped it for me, Don Lane, one holiday when he was over there.
Okay.
And it was a beautiful routine.
I'm sure it would be, yeah.
Bob Hope, who turned comedy into topical remarks.
As did yourself.
Well, yes, and I was going on to say, and thank you for pulling the tag early, Philip. I was just going to say how much I learned from Hope and Carson with the self-discipline required to do daily shows every night.
And so did I for Nightline. I learned the same discipline from Carson and Hope when I
How
worked
long
with
do you
Bruce.
spend a day preparing for the show, Philip?
Well, as I told Neil Mitchell, you really can't prepare for talkback. You're on a roll depending on the next call, Mike.
So you don't prepare anything?
There's a bit of a difference between Phil and Mike here because, Mike, as you would well know, you're talking about working and being funny. Phil's just not quite across either of those two.
Ah, Philip, but you are one of a kind.
Yes, but if I
I'm
gave...
not sure what kind.
No, we'll discover that someday. But in the meantime, if you had $1 for every time you'd done a Philip Brady gag, you could buy a mansion in Monte Carlo.
I probably could. Philip.
Yeah.
Yes, I could.
So without me, it mightn't have been so funny.
And actually, I don't know whether Mike would want me to tell this, Phil, but Mike once said to me, you cannot write a book about Australian television without mentioning Philip Brady. It's just an impossible thing to do.
It is.
Yeah.
Mike, I've enjoyed
How
this.
do you feel, Philip?
I've enjoyed this chat very much, but I don't think you're much of a raconteur, but do you have a favourite story you want to share with us, a favourite gag?
No.
Oh, that's the funniest thing yet.
When are you and Peter Sullivan going to do this floor show around Victoria that you've been threatening for years?
Oh, I don't know. I think Peter's busy writing the musical on Darren at the moment, or the musical that Darren has written.
That'll be interesting.
Yeah.
I'm looking forward to that.
You know how you have come out of your shell. When you were originally at Channel 9 with IMT, you were a very timid performer if a camera was pointed towards you.
Oh, absolutely.
And yet now, and this, you shone through at Graham Kennedy's funeral with that fax from heaven. You've become now a very confident entertainer.
I don't think we'll go that far, Philip. I'm happy with just getting away with it is my favourite phrase.
And thank you for sharing Easter Sunday with us.
That's all right, and happy Easter to you and all of you in there, and to all of your listeners.
Oh, good on you. Thanks, Mike.
Thank you.
And I'll see you for lunch during the week, Mike.
Okay, Nux.
Goodbye.